under coercion, under intimidation. Mr. Speaker, do you follow that document? Mr. Speaker, let me finish. Let me finish here this time. Mr. Speaker, let me finish. And you have to give me time.
Yes, the Honorable Chege.
I'll prove. I'll bring Kinoti here. Kinoti is still high.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, I respect Honorable Duale as a ranking member. And any evidence that he gives to this House must be factual. So for him to come and lie to this House that people signed under coercion, it is really very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. And I would like, Mr. Speaker, that we strict ourselves to the facts. We have people who are here, Mr. Speaker.
They will speak.
Who signed, they can speak on, their
Yes.
behalf and on themselves. And so I would really urge Honorable Member, Honorable
Thank
Duale,
you,
to
Mr.
just
Speaker.
speak the facts.
Mr. Speaker, you need to add me time. Mr. Speaker, in this House, Mr. Speaker, my good sister, Sabina Chege, at that time was the custodian of the instrument. Honorable Ochieng will speak. Honorable Kamket will speak. Yes. Members of PA will speak. Yes. Members of Mandela Chapchap will speak. And they will say under what condition, under what environment they signed. And the people of Kenya must hear to David Ochieng. Yes. And Mr. Speaker, because a commission of inquiry into certain things might be formed. So relax. Mr. Speaker, listen to us under Article 36, Sub-Article 1, Article 36, Sub-Article 2, Sub-Article 38 on political rights. Mr. Speaker, the other thing you need to, I'm inviting you to is whether Azimio coalition is a political party or a coalition party. And Mr. Speaker, I want to give as a ranking member. These are members who will approve me. And please, now I'm the member for township. In fact, the serious issue Azimio should think about is that they will not access the political party's fund. And I'll tell you why. The 6.9 million votes, Honorable Raila Odinga, a man who inducted me into politics, got it. He was the only candidate of that party in the general election. There was no MCS in Azimio. There were no MPs. There were no governors. Read the Political Parties Act. It says, Mr. Speaker, defend me from
pursuing an argument.
No, I'm pursuing an argument. You will have your time. No, Mr. Speaker, you can't shout. You can't shout when I'm on my feet. No.
Honorable Chonga.
Mr. Speaker, he has many.
Honorable Chonga, I believe you're a first-termer. Second term. Okay. Then you should know even better that Honorable Chonga.
Speaker is talking.
Honorable Chonga, there are your colleagues here who are here for the first time, and they are looking to you to learn on how to conduct yourself. It's out of order to stand up and shout at your colleague across the aisle. You seek the Speaker's permission, then you pursue a counter argument. But you do not stand up and behave in a rally situation, which I said we shouldn't have.
Mr. Speaker, because I have been very much interrupted, we'll give you about 3 more minutes. Mr. Speaker, I want you to also, I invite you to
I give you 2 minutes because
I want to invite you to whether the exit clause in the post-election agreement has any basis. Mr. Speaker, I looked at the Political Parties Act 2011. There is nowhere that will stop PA and these other parties from exiting. Let my colleagues tell me which section. Mr. Speaker, you need to look at whether, Speaker, some are telling you that the matter is sub judice. I agree. But Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 89.5 allows you as a Speaker to allow this House to discuss a matter that is in court. So, Mr. Speaker, we are within the parameters of law. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Speaker uses the Constitution. Use Article 108. This matter is very serious. Forget about coalitions, Mr. Speaker. deal with the political parties. If you have got 84 members, that is your share as ODM. If you have 145 members, that is a share given to you by the people of Kenya UDA. If you have got 5 or 10, like Kanu, Kamket has left, now you are less shares. If you are par, there are 3. They want to enjoy their freedom. And Mr. Speaker, during your predecessor, he made a ruling on a matter concerning Honorable David Ochieng. When David Ochieng was elected in a small party and coming from ODM stronghold, they refused to give him. That time they were called NASA. You know, they mutate. I'm in this house. From CORD to NASA to Azimio, the mutation and the turnover is so high. You know, it's so high, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what they will be, but Mr. Speaker, the Speaker ruled that Ochieng must be given a committee. Mr. Speaker, defend power members. They have the rights under Article 38. Mr. Speaker, do not look at agreements signed by you. You are at one time, Mr. Speaker, on a lighter note, you were at one time about to join Azimio. But God forbid you are a good Christian. You didn't join. Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Duale. Order, Honorable Duale. No member shall use Mr. Speaker to advance an argument. The Honorable John Badi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me first start by saying that I think we have started in the right direction. Why do I say so? Mr. Speaker, by allowing members to ventilate on this matter, to me comes out very clearly that Mr. Speaker wants to benefit from opinions or contributions by members from across the political divide. Mr. Speaker, there are certain things that are not in contention. What is not in contention is, one, that both Kenya Kwanza Coalition and Azimio One Kenya Alliance Coalition are not in dispute on who should lead the two coalitions. That there is just one letter coming from Kenya Kwanza nominating Kimani Ichung'wah as the leader, Owen Baya as the deputy, Honorable Soro as the whip, and of course my great sister as the deputy whip. Again, from the Azimio side, there is no dispute. The leader is Opiyo Wandayi, James Opiyo Wandayi, deputized by Mbui. The whip is Junet Mohammed, to be deputized by Sabina Chege. So that matter is settled. Both sides are clear on who should lead them. So the issue of minutes appended, attached, copies to be provided or submitted to the House rests there. Because unless there was contention as to who has been nominated by either side, then we would be discussing whether there are minutes, there are addendum or whatever it is. So having settled that, Mr. Speaker, what therefore is in contention in this House is which side is the majority. That is where we see the argument from Kimani Ichung'wah and his team and Opiyo Wandayi and his team arguing. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is not ambiguous. Article 108 talks about the leader of majority being the leader of the party or coalition of parties which has the majority membership in this House. Since it is clear, then what is not clear? What is being disputed here is these two coalitions, which has the majority membership. Now, I have heard the argument that we passed a law in this House that has created chaos or caused chaos. Nothing could be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Let us accept the legal framework that we have. We might have been used to the old framework, but what we created at the House was where we can have a political party with corporate membership, and therefore basically is a coalition political party and coalition of parties. Mr. Speaker, if you want to argue that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya is a political party, and not a coalition of political parties, the question you will want to ask or address yourself to is, what are the legal provisions for registering a political party? The legal provisions are clear. You must have 24,000 members, at least 1,000 from majority of our counties, which are 24. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance was exempted from that. Why? Because it is a corporate political party. Mr. Speaker, when you say that this is not a coalition, the next question you will ask, where in this country, of the 47 counties, does Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance has a registered party office? None. Yet that is a requirement in law to register a political party. The reason why Azimio was accepted to be registered is because it is a corporate political party. So the moment ODM, Wiper, Jubilee, KANU, etc. have registered offices, then Azimio la Umoja, in effect, has registered offices. Mr. Speaker, it is in that same reasoning why Raila Amolo Odinga, when he was presenting his papers to IEBC, was cleared because there was a requirement that he should present signatures of proposers and supporters. And those signatures must be from members of your political party. Azimio la Umoja does not have even a single direct membership. And therefore, Raila was cleared, having been supported by members of KANU, members of Wiper, members of ODM, members of Jubilee. Therefore, those members of KANU, members of ODM, members of Jubilee are all members of Azimio la Umoja as a corporate entity. The moment you are a member of ODM, by extension, you are also a member of Azimio la Umoja political party. Therefore, this reasoning that there is no member in this house who is a member of Azimio is faulty. You cannot. There is a gentleman in this house. His name is Junet Sheikh Nur Mohammed. This gentleman is the Secretary General of Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Coalition. And he's representing the people of Suna East. And then you come here and argue, and he's registered with the register of political parties as the Secretary General. Then you come here and you want to say that Azimio la Umoja does not even have a single member of parliament. That completely is misrepresentation of facts. Mr. Speaker, Azimio la Umoja was exempted from provisions of Section 5 and Section 6 of the Political Parties Act. Why? Because this is a corporate political entity, political party which has corporate membership. And that is why we were amending the law here, so that you could provide a situation where a political party is both a political party where you can be a member directly, and at the same time, political parties can be members of that political party. And that is the situation as it obtains today. You can take advantage of it and dissolve all, and make sure that all your political parties are also collapsed into one mega or a bigger political outfit called Kenya Kwanza without having to just have it as coalition of political parties. Mr. Speaker, you know, Azimio la Umoja is based on coalition agreement, just like any other coalition, like Kenya Kwanza. It is based on coalition agreement. And Mr. Speaker, I listened very carefully, and I was trying to avoid usage of these words, but I'll use it. I'll use them, because Honorable Solo did use them. Honorable Solo was saying that you cannot stop a political party from going to bed with another one. That if someone has married another person, you cannot stop that person from going to bed. Yes, you can't stop anybody from going to bed with another, but you can stop another marriage before the earlier marriage is dissolved. So someone can go to bed as they so wish, but marriage only subsists.
Sorry, Honorable Mbadi, there's a point of order. Give him the mic. There it is. Oh.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Mbadi is my mentor. I did not really want to interrupt him. But I now see that this may progress and progress and progress. We have parliamentary language. And that language is using that marriage going into bed, though earlier used by Osoro, is unparliamentary. So please, we could restrain ourselves from that. I'm very sorry, Honorable Mbadi, but you are a seasoned member. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Mboko is uncomfortable with the language, but the language is not unparliamentary. Going to bed is just going to bed. And marriage is marriage. But what I'm saying is you cannot start another marriage until you wind up the previous marriage. So, Honorable Soro, you should advise your new, what do you call them, the new whatever, to make sure that the other marriage is concluded first. But, Mr. Speaker, there was an argument here by Honorable Duale, which if you allow me to challenge, that there is something unconstitutional about what we have done in terms of making agreements. There is nothing unconstitutional. Article 92 of the Constitution allows Parliament to enact legislation to provide for the regulation of political parties. And in doing that, we created Political Parties Act, which gave rise within the Act to the agreements. Finally, Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this. As you protect the rights of those members of PAR, MDG, and others who want to leave Azimio, remember there is also the rights of people of Ugenya who elected Uchieng, knowing very well that he was Azimio, and he has not consulted them. So whose right is superior? Is it the on to Kenya?
Your time is up, the Honorable John Mbadi. From now going forward, thank you, Honorable Mbadi. Allow me to regulate your time down to 5 minutes per member. Are we in agreement? Yes. I'll give the floor to the Honorable David Ocheng.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would request for 10 because my name has been mentioned so many times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on this particular matter...
compress your arguments in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, on this particular matter, I wrote to your office on the 9th of September, Mr. Speaker, about our position in Azimio, having left the coalition party and joined Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have that letter here and I would like to table it. Mr. Speaker, the reasons for our leaving Azimio are very instructive because so much has been said about us and how the marriage was done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after the elections, the MDG NEC sat and reviewed the campaigns and our children in Azimio la Umoja, Mr. Speaker. And members brought the following issues. One, that in the former Nyanza, the Azimio leadership was so hostile to the MDG members running in that party, they were called Madoadoa. They were told that Azimio ends in Awasi, that when you come from Nairobi and you get to Awasi, you now leave, Azimio is dead, it's ODM stronghold, Mr. Speaker. This same thing happened in my constituency. When the Azimio party leader came to my constituency, I couldn't even attend because I was a Madoadoa. How would I be a Madoadoa and still belong to the party that calls me Madoadoa, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I would also like to table a letter from the register of political parties. We've written to the register severally, asking for a copy of the Azimio la Umoja 1 Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Up to date, we've not been given to it. Mr. Speaker, I'm tabling a letter here again today, the register telling us that they cannot give it to us, go to Azimio la Umoja. Mr. Speaker, I must say that what the Honorable Junet has tabled today, no one can verify its authenticity. No one knows whether what is tabled is the document that we signed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the letter that I have here, if you allow me to read it, this letter I'm holding is from the register of political parties to our party, saying they cannot give us the agreement, we go to the Azimio la Umoja headquarters, Mr. Speaker. You go there, you're told, come back tomorrow. Come back next week, Mr. Speaker. Up to now, our party has never received a copy of this agreement. I've perused what United has given to us, Mr. Speaker, and I dare say that the content of that agreement are not the ones that we negotiated, Mr. Speaker. So I cannot verify, I cannot truthfully say that what the United has tabled here today is what we negotiated, what we signed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 3, our party says that Azimio Moja had 3 organs: the council, the NEC, and the secretariat, Mr. Speaker. In all those organs, the council, the NEC, the secretariat, MDG has no body representing them there, not one. So how do we belong to a coalition that doesn't recognize that we exist, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, on the 29th of August this year, we wrote to the registrar withdrawing a membership of Azimio. I also wish to give that letter, Mr. Speaker, and the minutes of our NEC withdrawing membership from Azimio La Umoja, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, very important, Mr. Speaker, is the argument of the nature of the Azimio political party, Mr. Speaker. What has been tabled today by Mr. Junet, Mr. Speaker, is the instrument for registering Azimio coalition party. Mr. Speaker, there is nowhere, you won't find other political parties, there's nowhere where the parties forming Azimio registered a coalition. Because you must distinguish the two. There's a coalition party and the it means a coalition of parties.
Yes, order,
Mr. Speaker, it's not my intention to interrupt the honorable member, but Mr. Speaker, I urge him first to go through the document, Mr. Speaker. It is well written inside there, the formation of the Azimio coalition. Mr. Speaker, misrepresentation of facts, Mr. Speaker, will not be, this is a house of records. So we don't want it to go on record when the document is very clear on the formation of the Azimio coalition. It's well stipulated in the document.
Mr. Speaker, the document holding, which was tabled by John Junet, says a deal of agreement in respect of the Azimio La Umoja, One Kenya, being a coalition political party. My argument is this, Mr. Speaker, that for the argument that Azimio is a coalition within the frame of 108 and 19 of our standing orders, 2 things must have been done. 1, register Azimio as a coalition party, which is done. But where is the Azimio coalition of parties agreement to enable them claim that they are a coalition at the same time? That's the argument that I'm trying to make, Mr. Speaker. That there's a distinction between a coalition party on the one hand, which there is and exists, and a coalition of parties. Azimio is saying they have 2 legs. The only one you are being given today is 1 leg. Where's the other leg, Mr. Speaker?
Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, allow me. I just have maybe 2 more minutes, Mr. Speaker.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker.
30 seconds. Give him 30 seconds. I've given him 30 seconds.
Thank you.
You have a mic next to you. 30
This is
seconds.
too short.
To
Mr. Speaker, the same law we passed, Mr. Speaker, the same law we passed here in May allows a member of a party to be deemed to have resigned from the party if that member forms another party, joins another party, or talks about forming another party, Mr. Speaker. If the MDG party has clearly, openly, publicly said they are part of Kenya Kwanza coalition. Mr. Speaker, we request that you deem MDG under that law to have moved away from Azimio political party to Kenya Kwanza coalition, Mr. Speaker. So submitted. Thank you.
The Honorable Naisula Lesuda. She's left. I'll give to the Honorable Kamket.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this is my first time to speak in the 13th Parliament, and I want to thank the people of Tiati for bringing me back to this Parliament and congratulate you also and your deputy for your election as Speaker and Deputy. Mr. Speaker, as you make your determination on this matter, I would like you to have me in mind as a member for Parliament for Tiati constituency. Mr. Speaker, as you have me in mind, kindly refer to Article 36 of the Constitution in its entirety, And I ask you, Mr. Speaker, to protect me from being forced to stay in an abusive marriage. I plead with you, Mr. Speaker, to protect me from being forced in a very bad marriage. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have just seen the Honorable Junet table a document which was not disclosed to us throughout. The document he has tabled is not known to me as a member of KANU. It was never disclosed to us. We kept asking for it. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be party to an agreement that was signed without my knowledge of the material facts in it. And Mr. Speaker, as a pastoralist, Mr. Speaker, and a very serious nomadic pastoralist, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be put in a cage. I cannot be tied to a tree. If my cow cannot be tethered to a tree, how can a whole me, the member of parliament for Tiati constituency, be tied to a tree? Mr. Speaker, the question as you determine this matter, you need to ask yourself is this. Which agreement supersedes the other? Is it the pre-election agreement or post-election agreement? Because, Mr. Speaker, it depends on how the agreement was reached. If the agreement was reached through deceit and duress, Mr. Speaker, these honorable members know that I was arrested severally in the last term on trumped-up charges. Is that not one of the reasons why some of us decided to play along at that time? Yes. And now we are here as free. Freedom has come to the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. We shall hear the Honorable Kamket in silence.
So, Mr. Speaker, as you retire to determine this matter, it is important to take into account the present circumstances. You cannot, Mr. Speaker, deny the honorable members of this House, those who have attained that freedom, the opportunity to exercise their political and constitutional rights as provided for in Article 36 of the Constitution. Fundamentally, I mean, even in the provided in the laws of natural justice, Mr. Speaker, that when an old agreement, when a new agreement is signed, the other one just dies naturally. And when somebody makes a decision today, yesterday's decision does not matter. I am now, yes, laws of natural justice. So, Mr. Speaker, I plead with you. I plead with you, Mr. Speaker, to save me from that bad, abusive marriage.
Time up.
I was not the Azimio candidate. I am a member of parliament for Tiati, and my people know that I'm in Kenya.
I'll give the floor to the Honorable Didymus Baraza. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I will just go straight to invite you to Article 36 of the Constitution. And we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution. Article 36, Honorable Speaker, it protects an individual and a political party from the freedom of association. And even as you retreat to deliver the judgment on this matter, I want you to be guided by two things. Do we believe, if we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution and the freedom of association, can this freedom, which is a fundamental right, be taken away by an agreement between two people or between one party and the other, an agreement which was signed in an opaque manner, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe so. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, that I want you to look at is that it will be indeed a very sad day for Kenya. It will be a dark day for this country if you will allow that an individual or political parties can be forced to remain or to associate with a person they have vehemently refused. All those parties that have said they don't belong to Azimio One Kenya, they have said so through a letter, en masse. They have left this abusive marriage, Honorable Speaker, and it will be wrong. Your hands are tied, Honorable Speaker. You took oath of office to protect and uphold the Constitution. And because we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution, the fundamental right of an individual to associate with a political party of his or her choice cannot be washed away by you, Honorable Speaker. Your hands are tied, and if these people have said they want to leave the Azimio One Kenya Alliance, you have no choice. The One Kenya Alliance party has to let them go, and they should leave, Honorable Speaker. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, is that I was in this House when that law was being passed. I have a lot of respect for my good friend TJ Kajwang. But TJ Kajwang is the one who misled these members of ODM. He was masquerading as the People's Chief Justice into believing that this was a good law. You planted your own mango trees, you have to eat it, you have to live by it, as me and Kenya.
Order, Honorable Didmas.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I didn't really want to interrupt my good colleague, Honorable Didmas Barasa. But, Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Honorable Didmas Barasa to impute improper motive on the membership of this House, especially from ODM, by insinuating that TJ Kajwang misled a whole lot of us, people who have gone to school and have gone to school properly? Mr. Speaker, he should withdraw that remark and apologize to us. Someone like me who has gone to school and has gone to school properly cannot be misled by TJ Kajwang.
The Honorable Mbadi, the only difficulty I have is that TJ Kajwang is sitting there smiling broadly as being described. Honorable Didmas, you wind up your argument.
Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that we warned this ODM party that when you make laws for posterity. You don't make laws to support where you are standing. Now they are finding themselves on the receiving end. The Constitution must be applied rightfully. This Constitution cannot be rubbished. The rights that are in this Constitution cannot be taken away by people who signed a document, and I'm told even when they were signing those documents, they may have drunk some things which don't go to the stomach, but they go upstairs, Honorable Speaker. So the ruling for you is going to be very clear, Honorable Speaker, that the majority coalition is Kenya Kwanza.
The Honorable Robert Mbui. Nobody's on the floor, the Honorable TJ, so nothing is out of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that this issue of who is majority and who is minority has caused a lot of confusion. In fact, the media, our voters are confused to the point where some think that the same way we voted for the Speaker here is the same way we might end up having to vote for the leader of majority. But, Mr. Speaker, this issue is not opaque. This is in black and white. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've heard members here talk about some issues, and I think I would like to say that what we are facing as a problem now is a situation, and because members have talked about marriage, is a situation where your newlywed wife, after she settles in your home, notices that your neighbor has a brand new car. And then she starts now talking about an abusive marriage. But nothing has gone wrong. And Mr. Speaker, any relationship with a neighbor with a brand new car or a house on the top of the hill is actually a cohabiting relationship. It is not a properly procured marriage. So, Mr. Speaker, who has a properly procured marriage? Those of us, Mr. Speaker, that signed an agreement before the time of the election. Mr. Speaker, this Constitution Article 108 is very clear about the leader of the majority party, and it says on Part 2 that it is the leader of the largest party or coalition of parties. And Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that the size of a party is based on the number of elected members. Mr. Speaker, if you go back to the last election, there was 4 teams that were competing for elective office. Let's forget the Wajakoa and the other one. We are left with 2 teams, and that was Raila Amolo Odinga and William Samoei Ruto. Each of them had a coalition, which was known by everybody in the country, including even nursery school children. Mr. Speaker, the results of this election were announced, and it clearly showed that those that were elected under the Azimio la Umoja were more than those that were elected under the Kenya Kwanza. Mr. Speaker, it is only after the election that things started changing, and only after the announcement of Honorable William Ruto, His Excellency, as the president, that things started changing. If the results were different, I can tell you, we would not even be having this discussion. So let us be honest with ourselves and agree, Mr. Speaker, that the fact is this. You know, and I've heard that, I've heard people complain, but let me just tell you, the fact is that to determine the majority is by a letter that was read and tabled on the floor today. So what further argument do we have about deciding who is the majority? Now, in another month, Mr. Speaker, I do agree that Azimio la Umoja will not be majority. But as we speak today, Mr. Speaker, I think you have under no obligation to make that decision because the decision is already made for you. The Constitution has made that decision. The Standing Orders 2B has made that decision. So, Mr. Speaker, your work is easy for you. I've heard this issue of the Political Parties Act being lambasted by members of this House. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that we as members of the House are the ones that passed this law, and now we are insulting it. Mr. Speaker, there is no duress because members of Parliament did take a vote, and there are those that voted for it, and there are those that voted against it. Mr. Speaker, as you sit on your chair, please note, and this is a fact, that, Mr. Speaker, members make a decision through a vote. So if the vote is taken and this becomes a law, it becomes a law for the land. And His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta actually assented to it. So when we start saying it is an amorphous law, it is a bad law, it is a law that was under coercion, Mr. Speaker, I think it is unfortunate because as a House, we made a decision, we made our bed, we lie on it. But Mr. Speaker, there's nothing wrong with the Political Parties Act. It's only curing political indiscipline, where people want to belong to one party and another at the same time, where people are elected in one coalition and the next day they troop in their numbers to go and get coerced, Mr. Speaker, so that they can defect for the parties that elected them. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament must remain true to the people that elected them into the House, and those who are elected under Azimio must stick with Azimio. Mr. Speaker, there are people from our those who are elected under Azimio must stick with Azimio. Mr. Speaker, there are people from our region who are elected, and we went as Wiper to support them because they were in Azimio. Now, immediately after the election, they jump and go to Kenya Kwanza. But they have not gone to tell the people why they defected. Mr. Speaker, I think it is a simple decision. Azimio la Umoja is a majority party, and I am the deputy.
Thank you, Honorable. The Honorable, we have really many members. The Honorable Member Chepkonga.
Of the majority leader from the Azimio side. You know, Standing Order number 91 requires that you must be correct in the information you provide to this House. And you do not redact. This is not an ICC process, Mr. Speaker, where you redact certain information. The Azimio group, the Azimio coalition group, Mr. Speaker, must include the minutes. And they know this. When you are being elected as a member of parliament, you are just not elected by just any other person. There's a register of members in that polling station. And when you are declared as a member of parliament, there is a register which shows that these members of parliament, these voters participated in the election. Mr. Speaker, you have not been shown anything. They have been trying to convince you, you're not trying to hide facts here. You know, under some cloud here, Mr. Speaker. You know, you have heard Honorable Cheng, my very good friend. What he has just told you, he participated in the PG of Kenya Kwanza. And you are being told that it's the same people who elected Opiyo Wandayi as the majority leader. Now, I don't know whether it's split into two, so that we had half of Honorable David Ochieng in Azimio, and then the other one in Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker. You know, that is the reason why I'm inviting you, Mr. Speaker, to consider the document that was tabled here as I have information. It is not complete, it's not factual. They need to provide the people who participated in electing the majority leader. This was not a nomination. The standing order is very clear. The election, Mr. Speaker. And there's nothing skittering around on this matter. You must be faithful to the law. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, I have just had an opportunity to have a cursory look on the coalition agreement of Azimio. In fact, I would like to invite you to consider on page 11 that the members, it has already been tabled. I have just had an opportunity of going through, I've been given from the table office. I'll read for you, because you are the one who provided. Article 12 of the Code of Conduct, Mr. Speaker. It says members of the coalition partners shall abide by the provisions of Article 10 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite you to consider Article 10 of the Constitution, what it says. Article 10 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, says they will abide by the national values and principles of good governance, which includes human dignity, equality, and human rights, transparency and equality.
Order. Before you quote in extenso, I've been looking at this document tabled by the Honorable Junet. Having gone through it very carefully, it does not meet the test of a required legal document. It is not, some pages are initialed, some are signed, some are blank. Areas where you required two signatures of a certain political parties, there's only one signature. Other required signatories as outlined on the document, such as page 28, are blank. And others on page 27 have the same fate. Others on page 29, same. So I want to direct and rule that this document is inadmissible, and you shall make no reference to it.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, that in fact the document that was tabled was worthless. Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, Honorable Chepkonga, and going to the future, Honorable Junet, if you bring a copy of a document, try and authenticate it so that it can carry the color and force of law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for rescuing us from what Honorable Mbai has sought to put us into. Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite you also, and you have been invited, to consider Article 36 of the Constitution on freedom of association and 38 on the freedom, on the political rights. I don't know what is wrong with the Constitution.
We can't
Honorable
debate
Mohammed has
it
spoken.
is expunged from the record, so we can't debate it.
You cannot, it's not, you cannot have a point of order against the Speaker. Where are you coming from? Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite you to consider the two articles that I've mentioned, together with Article 25. You have heard Honorable Cheng saying that he has moved out of that political party, Mr. Speaker. Article 25 of the Constitution protects and it outlaws slavery and servitude, Mr. Speaker. You know, you cannot come here and tell us that you want Mr. Honorable Cheng to be your slave or you put him in servitude, Mr. Speaker. That is outlawed in the Constitution. And so that argument in the first instance should not even be pursued in this House, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the person who is doing it is shame on you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other one, Mr. Speaker, that I would like to invite you, except that there's nothing unparliamentary about English language. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you have been, except that now you have expunged this, so there's nothing for me to speak to about this Azimio. So, Mr. Speaker, with those very few remarks, in light of the fact that you have expunged it, it cannot be considered in this House. Declare Kenya Kwanza as providing the majority leader. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I've given, yes, Honorable Junet.
Mr. Speaker, the ruling you have just made has a serious implication on the issue that we are debating, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, the only known coalition agreement, and it was demanded by the members here that we should table it, Mr. Speaker, is the same document that in your ruling you have expunged, Mr. Speaker, from the records of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, unless the House has another set of coalition agreement, the only coalition document that is registered with the political parties registrar, Mr. Speaker, is this one, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it's protected from Chapkonga, Mr. Speaker. You know, Chapkonga has been farming for 5 years, Mr. Speaker. He has just come back to the House. Relax, Bana. Relax, Dugyan. Relax, Bana. I'm speaking to the Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
I will hear Honorable Junet.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are a house of debate, Mr. Speaker. And we have to, you are the only one we can address. Yes. Because the ruling you have made, Mr. Speaker, has a fundamental implication on the issue that we are canvassing before you, Mr. Speaker. Because all our coalition agreement of all those 26 parties is based on that document, Mr. Speaker, that you have expunged today, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, does it mean that as far as the House is concerned at this point, Azimio la Umoja coalition document is not recognized in Parliament? Then we move from there, Mr. Speaker.
Babo Wino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the internegram between Azimio One Kenya coalition and the Kenya Kwanza is keyword, Mr. Speaker, in the apex of the law, in the supreme law of the land, and in the Constitution in Article 108, sub-Article 2, that was also read by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Mr. Speaker, the article is clear that the leader of majority shall be the leader of the majority party or coalition of parties. And going by that, Mr. Speaker, in simple terms, it is very clear that Azimio, kindly give me time. Mheshimiwa, I don't know why you are so excited. Mr. Speaker, going by that fact, it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that Azimio One Kenya coalition party is the majority party in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, going by the, just keep quiet, one. I know you know only was English, so just keep quiet. Mr. Speaker, going by the rules of interpretation, the literal rule, the golden rule, and the purposive approach. The facticity of the fact is that Azimio Alliance, Azimio One Kenya Alliance is a coalition, is the majority coalition party. Mr. Speaker, number two, we talked about marriage. Mr. Speaker, Azimio is a subsisting marriage. And in this marriage is a potential polygamous marriage. And Mr. Speaker, this marriage is not voidable because there was consummation in this marriage. Mr. Speaker, the person who presided over this marriage was overqualified, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, the grounds for divorce, number one, is adultery or unfaithfulness, which we never experienced in our marriage, Mr. Speaker, because we campaigned together happily. Mr. Speaker, another ground is irreconcilable differences, which we never experienced, Mr. Speaker, in our marriage. And Mr. Speaker, a ground of insufficient or lack of finances has never been a ground. That our partners, having seen that Kenya Kwanza was forming the government, they ran away. Mr. Speaker, that marriage is not voidable. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about Article 36, as quoted by Honorable Didmas Baraza on the Bill of Rights, the right to associate, Mr. Speaker, there are limitations to the bills of right, including the right to life. Mr. Speaker, in the doctrine of necessity, in the case of the Queen versus Dudley and Stevens in the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, you know, when these defendants were on a trip, a voyage, Mr. Speaker, as I finish.
The ones who ate a small boy.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the two defendants killed Mr. Parker and fed on him, ate him. Then, Mr. Speaker, in the High Court, it was decided that it was not necessary to take life. But upon appeal, Mr. Speaker, it was decided, they were vindicated, that it was necessary for them to take the life because either way, they would have died. Therefore, there are limitations to any law, Mr. Speaker. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, our marriage was...
Babu, the court said they should have cast lots as to who should be eaten.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you are diverting law. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say that this requires simple interpretation, and we've already been given direction by the majority leader and the majority whip, Honorable Junet, and the majority leader, Honorable Wandai, on the direction to take on this matter, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I first want to thank the people of Kiharu for giving me another chance to come and serve them here in the August House. And Mr. Speaker, actually singularly thank them because they advised me not to have any campaign materials, that they would elect me without any. And they actually did that, Mr. Speaker. I also want to applaud the people of Kenya for voting and conducting our elections in a very peaceful manner, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we are all here celebrating our democracy. Going to the issue, Mr. Speaker, I remember very well when we were recalled from recess, Mr. Speaker, to come and discuss the amendment of the Political Parties Act, Mr. Speaker. We looked subdued then because we are facing people in this house who were chest dumping, telling us that they are the system, and their way was the highway. Mr. Speaker, we advised them that it is important that this House continues to make laws for posterity and for the good of all. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the bad law they passed, Mr. Speaker, has put them in the situation that you are in today. Mr. Speaker, the question before this House is on which and is on who is the majority. Which team is the majority in this House? And Mr. Speaker, this is very clear. We have Kenya Kwanza, where I belong, organized. It is a coalition of political parties. There are agreements, Mr. Speaker, of the constituent parties. We went to the elections, Mr. Speaker, and the parties that make the coalition of Kenya Kwanza emerged victorious insofar as majority is concerned. Mr. Speaker, it has been said there before, but it is good for me to put to record that UDA, the party I belong, we have 145 members in this House. Ford Kenya, Mr. Speaker, the SIBA party, we have 6 members in this House.
Yes, order. There's a point of order. Honorable Elisha.
Mr. Speaker, as one of the celebrated MPs from Game, I want to remind my brother of phonetics. You know, you can't use on or to. You must be clear on the language you're using, please. Speak good English, please.
Mr. Speaker, we may not have time to respond to every frivolities, Mr. Speaker. Ford Kenya has got 6, ANC 8, UDM 8, Mr. Speaker, Chap 2, PA 3, TSP 2, DP, MDG, NAP Kenya, MDDG 1 each, Mr. Speaker, and CCM 1. That makes a total of 179 members in this National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, that is already majority. If you add even, Mr. Speaker, the 10 members, independent members, who are currently leaning towards the majority side, Mr. Speaker, you can clearly see now we have almost a supermajority. But there are other issues, Mr. Speaker, insofar as some of the parties I mentioned is concerned. And I am going to the other side, Mr. Speaker, of Azimio, One Kenya Alliance. They purport to have tabled some agreement here, Mr. Speaker, which you have already voided. Mr. Speaker, an agreement signed on a blank paper, Mr. Speaker, at night in a dark room, where most of the material is not given to all the parties, Mr. Speaker, and under duress. There is no contract, there is no agreement that can be made in those kind of circumstances. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Yes, Honorable Babu.
Speaker, what Honorable Ndindi Nyoro is saying, Mr. Speaker, I know they are important and detailed, but the problem is that the most important parts are not detailed and the most detailed parts are not important. Mr. Speaker, it is very unparliamentary for him to act in a frivolous way, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the documents were signed in a dark room, Mr. Speaker. Did he see it, Mr. Speaker? That is out of order. Was he there, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is already up, I call upon. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying, Mr. Speaker, that the agreements, the purported agreements made on the other coalition, Mr. Speaker, they cannot start any test. They were made under duress, again in dark rooms and at night, Mr. Speaker. Most of these people were given blank pages to sign, and there is no page with content that is countersigned by those signatories, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our country is in paralysis.
Ndindi, your time is up. Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity. And first and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my party, Jubilee Party, for nominating me to be a member of this parliament, and also to confirm that Jubilee Party is part of the Azimio la Umoja kwa One Kenya coalition. And Mr. Speaker, just to say that the letter that was there before about Jubilee, that was our internal affairs, and Jubilee is family in Azimio la Umoja. I just want to confirm that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue at hand is who is the majority in this House. Mr. Speaker, a lot of people have alluded about marriage. We all went onto a competition when we went to look for votes. Mr. Speaker, we had two handsome men, and each political party chose where they wanted to go. After the battle, which was a fierce battle, and very close to call, Mr. Speaker, we got the results. And Mr. Speaker, I'll say fortunately, the Azimio La Umoja coalition got the majority of members of this House, Mr. Speaker. As fate would have it, Mr. Speaker, when part of our team saw that the other side, they were rising to go to the House on the Hill, some of them, Mr. Speaker, ran away. But I just want to remind them, Mr. Speaker, that it is good once you are signing a document, please read the document and just know the content of the document. Mr. Speaker, I also want to remind them that for the ones who have left, yes, they might vote on the other side, but legally, they are with Azimio. Until 90 days are over from the date after the election from 9th. And after that, Mr. Speaker, I am part of the Azimio Council. They are all welcome to come and table their grievances. And we shall again consider whether the grievances are true, and we can let them go, Mr. Speaker, if they so wish. But at this point, Mr. Speaker, even if they go, Mr. Speaker, and some of them have gone, and we respect their decision. Nobody is being forced or coerced, Mr. Speaker. It's just to let them know that the document they signed, ignorance has no defense. Whether they had read or not, they are bound by that document, Mr. Speaker. And so Azimio Party, Azimio Coalition has several parties, and we are the majority. And Mr. Speaker, I know you have also received communication from the Registrar of Political Parties. So we are not disputing who the majority is. Give us a chance, Mr. Speaker, to come here and agree on the way forward, to form the House Business Committee so that then we can serve Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Mutuse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to address this House. This being my inaugural address to the House, like many have done, I wish to thank my people of Kibwezi West for electing me to represent them here under Maendeleo Chapchap. Mr. Speaker, you notice that our party, Maendeleo Chapchap, is among the parties whose numbers are being contested, and therefore we have a greater interest than many in the current matter. Mr. Speaker, as a lawyer, I know legal arguments follow facts, and therefore it is important for us to lay the facts bare so that when you retreat to make your ruling, it will be as reasoned as possible. It has been insinuated by our friends under Azimio that Maendeleo Chapchap and other parties only jumped after His Excellency the President was declared. Nothing can be further from the truth. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling before this House a letter that was written by my party, Maendeleo Chapchap, on the 20th of April, over 100 days before the elections to the Registrar of Political Parties, in which letter we requested the Registrar to supply us with the coalition agreement, the Constitution of Azimio Kenya, and the nomination and election rules. Mr. Speaker, as it were then, a country that was run through dictatorship, a country that thought that the system is everything, and a country that disregarded the Constitution, the letter was not replied to. Mr. Speaker, I will also table before this House another letter that we wrote to the Registrar of Political Parties on the 27th of April 2022, in which letter we requested the Registrar to find it, we communicated the decision of the party, the organs of the party, to be removed from the Azimio One Kenya Alliance. Instead, the Registrar told us that she was under instructions from above, as it were, that we cannot exercise our democratic right to move out of the Azimio La Kenya. I will table the documents. Owing to that, Mr. Speaker, therefore, it is not factual, as has been insinuated, that Maendeleo Chapchap, under which I am elected and the member for Machakos was elected, moved from Azimio One Kenya Alliance after the elections, because the facts speak against. Mr. Speaker, again, after the elections, and noticing that the majority and minority determine how allocation of committees and leadership in this House is to be determined, we wrote a letter to you, the Speaker. Our letter dated 26th of September, and which was received in your office on the 29th of September, in which we restated that our numbers, the 2 elected members, will be associated with the Kenya Kwanza coalition. Mr. Speaker, I will also table that letter so that it goes on record. Mr. Speaker, in the letter we enumerated the circumstances under which our party was forced, coerced, to join the Azimio Kenya coalition. And we did state that we did not find, and the circumstances under which we were coerced to join could not legally stand, and therefore we wish our numbers to be counted under Kenya Kwanza. The question that we'll be answering is, when I stand here as a member of parliament and say I want to be counted under Kenya Kwanza, can somebody else force me to be in another coalition that I do not want? Don't I have a right under the Constitution to decide where I want to be? Don't I have a right under the Constitution to say where I want to be? Mr. Speaker, it has been put to you. It has been put to you, Mr. Speaker. I do not want to restate the Constitution because it has been properly stated before you. Mr. Speaker, it has been put to you that rights have limitations, and indeed rights have limitations. But when you sit to determine the limitation for under Article 36, Mr. Speaker, I invite you to look at Article 24, which says the test for limitation of rights. To limit a right must be limited by a legislation, and that legislation must clearly state the right which is being limited. Mr. Speaker, in this case, our good friends are relying on the limitation under the coalition agreement. The question you will ask yourself is, can a coalition agreement limit fundamental God-given human rights? When you sit, Mr. Speaker, determine that I, Mwengi Motuse, under Maendeleo Chapchap, and my colleague, Honorable Caleb, wish to be associated with Kenya Kwanza, and that's where our numbers should be counted. And we cannot be forced to be in a coalition that we do not want. Mr. Speaker, also, as you sit to determine, realize that the particular, and I know you have expunged from the record, so we do not have a document speaking to the coalition agreement between under the Kenya Kwanza. But I have seen in documents that the coalition agreement says that you cannot move until 3 months are over before the elections. Also, exercise your mind as a seasoned advocate that that time is going to lapse on the 9th of November, which is about 3 weeks to come. And therefore, it is anticipated, actually, people can move out. It is anticipated that people can move out. Mr. Speaker, yes. Mr. Speaker, we are making an argument, and everybody will have the opportunity to make that argument. And Mr. Speaker, find that the requirement to wait for 90 days is unreasonable. Mr. Speaker, under Article 38 of the Constitution, the political rights that are given to the citizens of this country, you are supposed to enjoy them without unreasonable restrictions. Unreasonable, mark the word, unreasonable restrictions. To require us to stay for a particular time when we are not there is an unreasonable restriction, and therefore null and void to the extent that it is unreasonable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support that we are in Kenya Kwanza, and that is where our numbers should be counted.
The Member of Parliament for Mandera North.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the debate. For the record, I'm a member of UDM, and in fact a senior member as the deputy party leader of UDM. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution guarantees freedom of association and freedom of movement. You can at any one time associate yourself with any party or individual as you so wish. And the Constitution is the supreme. The Azimio Coalition Party, One Kenya, has what we call the council, where each member of their coalition is represented by one member of the party. For record, UDM is not represented in that council. And it is in black and white. Our party, UDM, if they say that we were part of the Azimio coalition, we contested in various and many counties. One example is in Siaya County, which is also the bedrock of Azimio. A member who was a candidate of under UDM has been called names, including Niwatuya Al-Shabaab, coming from Azimio. So that means you are not part of Azimio. That has been said, it's on record. So that shows we are not part and parcel of Azimio. We have moved away from you. Actually, we have run like Murife. It's not don't run, but we ran very fast. Standing order 2B is very clear. And I want to remind my former chairman of PAC, Honorable Ondanyi, that it says the clerk shall obtain certified copy of coalition agreement, not a letter. What we have is a letter by the political parties registrar, but not a certified copy of the coalition agreement. Why is this agreement not seen in public? You have just ruled out that one that was presented to you. You said some pages are blank. It's very true. We signed a blank paper under duress, under coercion, under threat. You have actually confirmed that what Honorable General has presented is blank in some pages. And that is exactly what they presented to some of the members on 12th of March at KICC. The most important part is that we have freedom of association and freedom of movement. We are no longer part of Azimio because they never treated us as one. I've given the examples why. We're not in the council. During campaigns, they treated us as Madodoa, as my friend Honorable Cheng has confirmed. Our party, UDM, has 8 members in the National Assembly and 3 in the Senate. We are that strong, and we are fully in Kenya Kwanza coalition. We have signed a post-election agreement in broad daylight, where all the pages were signed, initialed, and I was present as a senior member of UDM. The one that we signed in KICC on 12th of March, we have not seen any of the copies, except the last page only had a signature. So whatever we signed is what now Honorable Junet has brought with some pages which are blank. That is hot air. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to confirm as the Deputy Party Leader of UDM that we are firmly in Kenya Kwanza coalition, and we are no longer, or we do not want any association with Azimio One Kenya Party. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Lekorere. Mheshimiwa, are you called Lekorere or Korere? Korere. You have the floor. Give the honorable member the mic.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, indeed, I want to confirm to this House that Jubilee is a member of the Kenya, no, please. Jubilee is a member of the Azimio.
All the honorable members.
Hold your horses, members. No. Honorable Speaker.
You will be heard in silence, honorable members.
Honorable Speaker, I want to ask my colleagues in Kenya Kwanza that a woman standing here is an independent woman. I didn't come to this parliament through some party waves. I created my own wave which brought me here. and I am in Jubilee, and I am in Azimio One Kenya Alliance. And I want to confirm this, Mr. Speaker. You know, a lot of people have talked about coercion and duress, and they left me wondering, what kind of cowards do you have in this house? I mean, full men, upstairs and downstairs, talking of coercion. I mean, Honorable Speaker, was it at gunpoint? Was it at knife point? Could they scream for help? What exactly was the problem? And Honorable Speaker, a lot of people have been talking and making reference to this constitution. The same constitution these members want to define. Because we have been read Article 108 and 107. As to who is the majority leader, it leaves no doubt. It is Azimio, honorable members, until such a time when you can walk out of this marriage. And Honorable Speaker, I want to say, because I come from a community where polygamy is accepted and it is actually celebrated. And Honorable Speaker, in this marriage, some of our members have chosen to flirt with the people they think have money. Wait until you know where that money is coming from. And I want to plead with the members of this House. You know, today we are enjoying democracy that a lot of Kenyans died for.
There's a point of order, Honorable Correa.
You know, Honorable Speaker, when you state something, Honorable Speaker, more so when you state something as the Honorable Sarah Correa is stating and waving a copy of the Constitution, and she quotes Article 107 and 108, and qualifies that by saying that if you read, then you will know Azimio is the majority party. I think Honorable Sarah Correa is completely out of order, because there is nothing in the Constitution, either in Article 107